Hey YouTube, it's Justin here with Alternative Drummer. So you bought an electronic drum kit and you live in an apartment, and now your downstairs neighbor's pounding on the ceiling because it sounds like you're stomping on the floor when you play the drums. This has happened to me, and it's happened to a lot of people out there who buy the electronic drums. They think that finally they're not going to be bothering their neighbors, just to find out that they still bother their neighbors. Now there's many ways you could deal with this, and I've tried a lot of different experiments over the past few years, and I'm gonna show you what I'm using right now and what I think really works the best. Before we get started though, be sure to follow my latest musical project on Spotify, which is called Mockman Mini. I've got a brand new album out as well as a new one on the way. So check out that link down below. All right, so if we go back a few years ago, one of the first things that I did to reduce the vibrations going downstairs from my electronic drums was build a floating drum riser. Now this involves taking two pieces of plywood, basically as big as the entire set to sit on, and basically creating a plywood sandwich with half tennis balls in the middle. This definitely reduces the vibrations. However, it's a lot of work, and I found much easier solutions than going through all of that. And in fact, I think what I'm using right now seems to work just as good, if not better, than a lot of those floating risers. And I think one of the reasons why the floating riser doesn't work as good as some of these other options is because you're basically creating an entire stage that your drum set is sitting on, and that's made out of wood. Wood also resonates. So if you have this entire drum set on this one giant piece of wood, it is going to create more vibration in that wood, kind of like an acoustic guitar. Of course, you know, when you have the tennis balls and everything underneath, it does absorb some of those vibrations, but you're basically creating more vibration in the process by setting all the drums on one giant piece of plywood. So let me switch the camera over now, and I'm gonna show you all the different things I have going on my two drum sets that I have set up here in my room, and just explain all the vibration reductions that are happening. All right, first I'm gonna show you what I've got going on my Simmons SD2000 kit. Now, first off, the main source of vibration comes from your bass drum, because this basically sounds like you're stomping on the floor. When you're playing the drums, electronic drums, whoever's downstairs from you, it's gonna sound like you're stomping on the floor. So one of the best ways to reduce the complaints are just to deal with the bass drum. And basically that's all I'm doing on this kit right here. So the first piece of gear that I'm using here to reduce the vibration is the Roland Noise Eater. Now these things are actually quite expensive for what they are. They're basically just a platform that the bass drum pedal sits on that has these rubber kind of half circles underneath, like you can see right there. And sorry for that angle. And you know, they're kind of small. They're not like the greatest thing in the world, because you can see right here, my bass drum doesn't even totally fit on it. And in fact, the spurs don't fit on it at all, but you can see I've dealt with that in a different way. I'll talk about that here in a second. But for the most part, the bass drum pedal does fit on here, and the majority of the bass drum trigger pad fits on here. That being said, even though they're expensive and they're kind of small, they do work really, really well. They seem to absorb 90% of the shock from the bass drum, and reduces a lot of the sound that's traveling down below. So these things are really good. They're kind of pricey. I think they're around $120. I'll post a link down below, but they are worth it. Just keep in mind that they're a little bit small, and there's other ways to deal with this, which I'm going to show you here in a minute. Now the other thing, since I'm using a double bass drum pedal, if I lift this up, you can see what I did here is I got these mini tennis balls and I hot glued them to the bottom of this base plate of the bass drum pedal. This works shockingly well, actually. And in fact, I used to have the other side like that too before I got the Noise Eater, and it worked pretty good. For the double, you know, I think this is just fine. You really don't need to have two Noise Eaters, in my opinion. You can get away with just gluing the tennis balls if you don't care about, you know, gluing stuff to your pedal. I pretty much, you know, designated this pedal to be used with my electronic drums all the time. And another good thing about that is it actually raises up this almost as high as the Noise Eater, so they're pretty even as far as height. So that works really, really well. The other thing, and I've talked about this many times, are the tennis ball beaters. These are made by Cat Percussion, called the Silent Strike Beater, but they're also made by Gibraltar. I think they just call them the tennis ball beater. And in fact, I think these are Gibraltar ones I have on here, or maybe one of them's a cat and one of them is a Gibraltar. But these things cut down on that slamming sound that when you hit the bass drum, it actually sounds quite soft. So that's pretty good. And these will work on mesh. I've had comments by people saying, oh, you shouldn't use those on mesh, but they are designed to work on mesh. Even if you watch drum-tec, or go to drum-tec's website, they recommend using these tennis ball type beaters on mesh heads. The only ones you shouldn't use on mesh heads are felt. These are not felt beaters. They're just a little fuzzy, but they're not the same material as felt. So even though it does leave a mark here, there's no real damage being done to the head. So they do work on mesh heads, and there's no reason to worry about them. Okay, now lastly, underneath the spurs, you can see right here that I have, these are air conditioner vibration absorption pads. You can buy these from Amazon.com. I'll post links to these as well as some of the other things I'm going to show you here in a minute. And I first got these, originally I bought a whole bunch of these things and I was going to build myself another platform, like, the floating riser type thing. But then I got to thinking, well, maybe I can just use them selectively where I need them. And the nice thing about these is since they have this, these ridges on them, these lines, that actually keeps them from sliding. Like amazingly, I don't have anything, like there's nothing attached, there's nothing like fastened, and I'm not getting any sliding whatsoever, amazingly. So they work good for that. I'm on a rug here, and I'm on 2 rugs, so that's just another thing you can do to help cut down the vibration. But I think the combination between these underneath the spurs, the Roland noise eater, and the tennis balls on this side of the pedal are enough to cut down on the vibrations of this kit. In fact, I don't have anything underneath the rack on these drums. It's just basically sitting on the floor. But this rack on this drum kit is actually quite heavy, and I don't really think that there's that much vibrations traveling through the rack and going down through the floor. Maybe a little bit, and I probably could, do something to cut down on the vibrations a little bit more, but I haven't had any complaints, so I think I'm doing pretty good on this one. All right, here's my other electronic kit. As you can see, underneath the rack, I have these thingies. Now these are more vibration absorption materials that you can buy from Amazon. These are made for washers, and these are actually some very thick rubber that absorb a lot of shock. And I have them underneath every single post on the drum rack, and they seem to do a pretty good job. Again, I haven't had any complaints since I've started doing this stuff, and setting up the drums this way in this particular room. And nothing is really causing any problems as far as I can tell. But anyway, in addition to that, I've also created my own bass drum riser here. And this is similar to the noise eater concept. It's just a little bit bigger. And another thing is I didn't want to spend $120 on another noise eater. So what I did is I actually went to a few different places. I went to a thrift store, and I went to a dollar store, and I found all the stuff I needed to make this. And I think the total cost was somewhere around $6. Now the way that I did it is actually what this board is. This is a bulletin board. This is a cork board bulletin board with a doormat on top of it, taped to it. Then underneath, see if I can lift this up a little bit. Underneath are styrofoam letters. I'll flash a photo on the screen as to what these things actually look like. I got these in the dollar store. So basically what they are, they're just, I forget which letters I used, but I just took a couple letters and stuck them on the bottom of the cork board, and then put the doormat on top of the cork board, then use some gaff tape to tape it all together. Very simple. Nothing too complicated here, but this thing works really, really well. And the reason why I went with the bulletin board, cork board, is because these things that I showed you before that are underneath my SD2000 kick drum spurs, I noticed that they use cork to absorb shock. So that got me thinking, well, cork must be a good shock absorber. So when I saw the cork bulletin board, I was like, oh, I bet that would be a good bass drum isolation pad. So that's what I did. And then having it has like a wooden frame around it that you can kind of see it right there. Having the foam letters underneath seemed to give it enough support to where I'm not like busting through the cork board when I play the drums. Now, in addition to that, I have more of those other noise isolation pads that I showed you before in front of the bass drum pad to absorb the shock to the wall, or to keep it from sliding into the wall. Because this one did slide a little bit, whereas my other one doesn't slide, this one does slide a little bit. And that's really all I have on these two kits. All right, hopefully you all found this video helpful and educational. What have you done to reduce the vibrations for your electronic drums? Did it work? Let me know down below. Anyway, thanks for watching everybody, and I'll see y'all really soon. Have a great day.